Everyone, welcome to Movieception Show. My name is Fariba, and let me just say Happy New Year's to everyone out there. It's still 2024 here, as of me recording this video, but what better way to end off the year of 2024 than to do my own selection of what I believe were what I thought were the top 10 movies of 2024. Now, I do want to give a disclaimer that I did not watch a whole bunch of movies, and it was one of the reasons why I actually left this video right till the end, because I was actually doing a lot of catch up with some of the films that I had missed, especially one that has been getting a lot of Oscar buzz. But even with that being the case, I still have not caught up with all the movies, so you'll see my top 10 list. You'll see there's a couple of names that did not quite make it to my list, but even with that being the case, I'm really excited to go and just reflect on 2024. Now, I will admit, as I'm looking back at 2024, it did start off a bit slow, and I think it makes a lot of sense just because it was just coming right off of the writers and actors strike. I think the actors strike had ended right in December, so it made sense why it started off very slow in the beginning. I don't think we had our first big movie till March. We would have been Doom Part 2, and even then I felt like throughout the year there was just like these intervals of these movies that were coming out where they were just really disappointing, and then suddenly we'll just have like a whole like chunk of films that were very entertaining. And I mean, that was something I was feeling out a lot throughout the year, especially in like the September month. I mean, September is typically one of the more slower months anyways, but around like September, October, I was feeling a lot of that. But even that being the case, we had quite a great selection of films. Some films that, as I'm looking back on them, it's just like, wow, I can't believe they came out this year. I know next year we're going to have quite a lot of films coming out, so I can't wait to do my most anticipated film later this week. I mean, we have a lot of time. I don't think we actually have any new releases this week, so that's great. I'm looking forward to doing my top 10 for that reason. And so before I go right down into my top 10, I think one of the funniest things this year is that I think I watched a lot more bad films this year. That's not to say, like, again, my opinions of films that I didn't enjoy are very different from everyone else. Again, movies are subjective for a reason. So movies that I didn't personally enjoy, like other people might, but I felt like given this year, I felt there was some very strong reactions I felt with some films that made me have a little bit of a bad aftertaste. So I just thought I wanted to quickly like name off of some of the films that I truly thought were maybe the worst in my opinion. And again, there's no particular order, so we're talking Argyle, Madam Web, Craven the Hunter, Rebel Moon Part 2, Borderlands, Baby Girl, The Strangers Chapter 1, Megalopolis, and Joker Filet I Do. I feel like those are kind of the main culprits, although I know a lot of people did like Baby Girl. I just personally didn't like it. I thought it was really pointless. Like I actually saw it like this past weekend, and I was just like, why did I even watch this film? It just felt so pointless. There was a lot of things that they opened up in terms of like potential stories, and they just never really dove into it. And then the actual conclusion of it just was like, whatever. So I personally did not like Baby Girl, and I thought it was just a really pointless movie, and that's why I put it in like my least favorite movies of this year. But I just felt like I wanted to mention those because, like, yeah, I had some really strong responses. I just thought this might be something new I could do. But yeah, without further ado, let's get right down into my top 10. Movies I have not seen, I do want to mention are Nickel Boys, September 5th, The Last Showgirl, and The Brutalist. So I do want to mention that I have not seen those 4 movies. I know there's been a lot of award buzz with these 4 films, but I have not seen them yet. I think The Last Showgirl is coming out next week here, so I will get to that eventually. The Brutalist, I really tried so hard to find it, just couldn't find anything here, at least not here where I live. And I don't think Nickel Boys or September 5th are out yet. So looking forward to seeing those hopefully when award season comes around. So there's that. Before going down into my top 10, I know we're trying to get, I want to get right down into it too. Let me just mention a couple of honorable mentions. So these are movies that I did really enjoy for the most part, but just didn't quite make my top 10. But still, they're worth watching if you have not seen them already. So we're talking Saturday Night, Speak No Evil, Furiosa, Juror Number 2, Civil War, Transformers 1, and A Quiet Place Day One. I know there's a couple of names here that are a little bit on the controversial side. I know some people are a little bit more mixed with Civil War and A Quiet Place Day One. I personally really did enjoy them. Oh, another one, Jordan number 2. I quite enjoyed all 3 of those films, in my opinion. I think they were there's something about those films that I really liked in terms of like the depths and the meanings and themes behind them. So that's one of the reasons why I thought they were maybe, like, if I had like extended my list to maybe the top 20, they probably would have been in there. But I thought these were wanted to mention as my honorable mentions because they were some really good films. So, but yeah. Without further ado, let's get right down and start off with number 10. So starting off at number 10, I have Nosferatu. Very interesting, very intriguing for me to even include this, because Robert Eggers is a very specific auteur. I mean, if you've seen The Witch, if you've seen The Northman, like, he has a very specific style. Now, I will admit, going into Nosferatu, that I was a little bit hesitant. Of course, when the reviews were coming out, it's like, okay, it does seem as though this is going to be a very quality film. But I mean, also, it's just like Robert Eggers, like, he has a specific style that some people may like it, some people won't, and I can sometimes kind of lean into either or. So I will say that going to Nosferatu, it does start off very slow. Like, it takes a while to get into the story. That was something that I was feeling a little bit off when I was watching the film. I was like, okay, not a really good impression. But the more I watched it, the more I started to really appreciate some of the themes and just perspective and execution of the story, especially since it is a remake of the 1922 version. Yes, it's a little bit more graphic, it's a little bit more violent and mature, but you can see how, you know, when you're watching this film, you can see that Robert Eggers had a specific vision for this film. I mean, it is very stylistic, it is very visual, the cinematography is absolutely remarkable, just the way that he has some of the camera work to execute just some of the ominous feel to what's going on in and around with the characters and Count Orlok, and just how they're kind of he's trying to like show the shadows of Count Orlok. And on top of that, you have the performances from Lily Rose Depp and Bill Skarsgård. I mean, just as more I started to watch this film, the more I started to really appreciate the execution and the vision that Robert Eggers had for this film. Like, you can tell just as you're watching this, that this is a film that felt really personal to him, one that he really took a lot of delicacy in putting the details in for this film. And once you get to the end, of course, I know a lot of people are a little bit more divisive about that, but I think once you do get to the end, you realize just how, you know, how important this story is, what it really means in terms of, you know, the eroticism and sexuality, and what this means for a character like Ellen in a film like this, and how she tries to deal with Count Orlok. And I think the more you watch it, the more you start to really appreciate just the vision that Robert Eggers puts into this film and giving his own execution for it. And I think that it really works for a film like Nosferatu. So, and again, for me, I mean, and I think this is like one of those cases where like I really do appreciate gothic horror. So, again, number 10, Nosferatu. Not really a huge surprise. I think it's a really great film. We'll see how it does at award season. At number 9, this might be a really interesting one. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Now, I don't recall if I did a review for this or not. Maybe I did. If I did not, I will admit that, you know, when you compare this film to the original trilogy with Andy Serkis, it is not in the same caliber per se, but it's still a very good follow-up in terms of continuing off what is essentially the legacy of Caesar, and showing a whole new generation where we see this post-world with the humans as well as the apes. And I think that this is a film that does a really great job of showcasing that, and just how people have changed, how the generations have changed, and doing some way with these characters. Oh man, I forgot some of the characters' names, but for instance, you have the maid thing, then you have some of the twists. I think what made this movie so great in particular is the visuals. When you compare the CGI from this film to from the previous ones, you can see just how improved it is, how very enhanced it is in terms of the visual effects. Just to see the emotions and how, you know, the characters emoting their emotions, and how they're able to continue off of Andy Serkis's efforts, and trying to make sure they continue off with this whole like idea of CGI and motion capture. This film does a really great job of that. Of course, again, I mean, this is a film that still again shows the tragedy of what's going on with humans versus the apes. And it's not a very happy ending. I think that this is a film that I think continues off that whole legacy. And you can tell that this is a film that is still trying to stick to the lore itself, especially with the original one from, what was it, the 60s. So this is technically still kind of preluding in terms of timeline from the original film, but it is still a sequel to the original trilogy. And you can see how it does a really fine job of having a new kind of story without having to be so overwhelmed with trying to reflect on Caesar, but still doing a great way of still honoring his legacy. I think this is a great job. This film did a great job of doing that. So I look forward to seeing how I think there's supposed to be like 2 more sequels. So I look forward to seeing how the rest of the trilogy is going to turn out for this film. I think it's a very promising start to a whole new trilogy. But yeah, I think for now, it makes sense why I put this at number 9. I really did enjoy this film. It was really great. And it makes sense why I put it at number 9. All right, at number 9, this one is probably going to be one that's a little bit more shocking. And I think I should mention that when I was making this top 10 list, I'm not looking at this film in terms of like the techniques and execution and just the quality of it, but a lot of it's also just based upon how entertained I was, how much, fun I had with it, whether or not it had a personal impact on me when I was watching the film. And I think that's going to be a key thing with some of the other films I have on this list. And specifically, if it's a film that I still think about to this day, like, is it, like, even after watching 6 months after its release, is it still something that I'm still thinking about? So at number 8, I have The Fall Guy. I know it's a really surprising, maybe it might not be surprising. I mean, this is a film that I feel like deserved better, because it is just a really fun movie. Yes, it's not like it's going to win any Oscars, or it's not going to win any sort of like awards or anything like that. Maybe for stunts, who knows? But aside from that, it's not like a film that you typically would see is going to be nominated for like any sort of big awards. But that being the case, this is still a very fun film. I mean, just from the trailers, you can just tell that this film was going to be very, like, I mean, first off, it was going to be a great love letter to the stunt community. I mean, this is something that has been, heavily discussed in the movie community, where whether or not there should be a category for best stunts at award shows, whether or not that's even should be considered. But at the same time, this is a film that does a really great job of honoring them, showing why, stunts is a very important job, why it's very delicate, and doing so in a way that really honors them, but also doing so in a film that's very entertaining, very fun, has even its mix of action, romance, and comedy. I mean, Ryan Gosling, Emily Blunt, they do such a really great job of carrying this film, especially with Ryan Gosling. I mean, he's not a guy who we typically see do a lot of action films, but when he does, and when he definitely does let loose, you can just see how he really exudes some of the best parts of his acting in a character like the one he has here, one who is very loose, not too dramatic, not too serious, but really fun. And this is one of the reasons why I really love Ryan Gosling as an actor. And again, kind of reflecting upon me defending him last year during the whole Barbie situation and his casting. And again, it's just seeing him, how he's very versatile as an actor, and we see that here as well in The Fall Guy. I wish this movie could have done better. I believe it did do well, at least in streaming, so who knows, maybe this is a film that, because it didn't do so well financially, that maybe it will grow to become a cult classic. Who knows? I mean, it's really possible. But again, Fall Guy had such a blast watching in theaters. I was like having a lot of fun with it, so that's why I put it up right at number 8. At number 7, I have a film that, I feel like it has to be here somewhere. I actually did do a recent rewatch, because I feel like in the first go around, I wasn't particularly, I didn't particularly connect with it at the moment. But I think the second time around, I definitely felt a little bit more of the emotions more times than this, and that is, of course, Inside Out 2. Now, the first film, I will tell you, that film made me brawl like a baby, especially when we get to the end. I mean, that's something that I feel like a lot of us have experienced in some form or some way. So it's just a really personal film that a lot of people can relate to, whether or not you're an adult or a kid. I've seen kind of the difference though, so that's such something I want to mention. But even that being the case, I remember going into the second film just being a little bit more hesitant about whether or not it'll be able to meet up with the expectations, be able to meet up to the level of the original movie. And I think in the first try around when I saw it, I didn't have that, but thinking the second time around, I definitely did feel it. Of course, a lot of it is just because this whole feeling of anxiety and how much that can consume us in the moment, and seeing that part in the end when, anxiety starts to kind of lose touch and kind of it becomes, I don't want to say unstable, but does lose control of the remote. It's like, I think we all have felt that at some point. I mean, not even at some point, like we've had those moments many, many times, especially when we were like teenagers and still trying to figure out what we want to do, and what we feel like would be best for us. I think, again, this is a franchise that does a really great job of really showcasing what it's like to grow up, what those emotions are going to be like, the fact that not everything's always going to be happy, not everything is always going to be great or joyful. There's going to be cases where, yes, so we're going to have some low points, and I think this is a film that does a really great job of showcasing that. And again, I feel like if you watch it more and more, it's like something that you can really start to connect with a little bit more. I think that's what happened with me. Like, I think the second time I watched it, I felt it a little bit more emotionally. So that's why I put it up at number 7 for that reason. At number 6, I have Alien Romulus. Not really a huge surprise there. This is a film that, you know, really rejuvenated the Alien franchise in the best way possible. Again, I'm not the biggest horror person, but this is a film that really does a really great job of executing the sci-fi horror aspects of it. I mean, it does feel very much like Aliens. It does feel like a lot like more like Aliens. But also what's really refreshing about this is that you have some new characters, but also you don't dumb down the stakes of it. And also just the way that things progress in the film, especially up until you get to the ending where you have that hybrid creature. Yeah, I mean, a lot about this film is just absolutely spectacular. You have some great performances, you have some great visuals, you have this this interesting twist at the end. But what makes this movie so remarkable is this dynamic between Andy, oh man, what was the other character's name? It was Andy and Keely Spaney's character. I can't remember what her name was, but just seeing their dynamic and how they really rely on each other, I think that was a really key thing that helped really make the story a little bit more personable, and not just like, you know, having to be focused on like, you know, the previous films where you have like something more technical, logically scientific personnels. Like, you just have kids, I mean, technically kids, but yeah, you basically have these just these normal people, these normal citizens who are just trying to make, you know, trying to survive in some way and trying to leave off out of a planet once you see the disaster strikes. And I think that this is a film that, again, doesn't really dumb down the stakes, really hones in on the horror side of things, and at least, and also with the fact that you do see some really personal touch in terms of like the dynamic you see between the characters. So I feel like this really does a great job of rejuvenating the Alien franchise. I think Fede Alvarez does a really great job of giving his direction for this film and his vision for it, and trying to do everything he can to try and revive this whole franchise. And I think it does a really great job of that. We'll see what happens when we do get a sequel for it. I know we're going to have also the Alien Earth series that's coming out next year. So right now, because of this film, I am now excited for Alien once again. And so I hope that continues on moving forward, especially now that we have a lot more coming out of the Alien franchise. Right, so before I get right down into the final 5, I do want to mention really quickly that going into my final 5, I would say that these are the films that I knew immediately were going to be my top 5. Like, these films I just knew that were like personally some of my favorite films this year, no joke. In terms of like the ranking, I do want to kind of give kind of a quote unquote like heads up that honestly, like, it just depends on the day of how I feel with the ranking. So you can honestly just, you know, rearrange these things, rearrange the rankings like depending on the day. I think especially with my top 3. So, but yeah, let's get right down to my top 5. These are the ones I really, really love. Like, I really enjoyed. So let's get right down into it. So number 5, I have Conclave. I know this sounds like a really big surprise because it's just like, Conclave, really? And I know, like, I'm not really the type of person who's really into like anything that's like faith-based or church-based. I mean, it's not technically even either one of those. It's just like the setting is that it's in a church. But I have to say, going to this film, I was expecting it to be very, very predictable. I was able to kind of pinpoint who's probably going to become the next pope, what's going to be the next move, what some of the characters are thinking. I was able to guess a lot of things about this film, but that doesn't take away the fact that this film does a really great job with some of the performances here, especially coming from Ralph Fiennes and Stanley Tucci. I mean, they all do a remarkable performance just to show this kind of this backstabbery and how people are being, you know, suspenseful, and people are like, are very on edge about what some people are going to try to do, and just the whole clash of politics and beliefs and faith, and how some of the people are really, you know, kind of against each other. I really liked seeing that dynamic. It was very interesting. Now, given the fact that I just mentioned that I was I thought this film was pretty predictable. It wasn't until you get to the end of the film that it's what really, really, it's really the reason why that I put this in my top 5, because the ending does not come out of anywhere. It's such a really shocking plot twist. Because again, I was just like, oh, I had a feeling this was going to happen. And then once you see that there's something very off, and then you get to the really big plot twist, that's when I was like, holy crap, this is remarkable. And I was lit up in the theater when I saw this. I mean, everyone in my theater was just like in awe when they heard the plot twist. And I think what's really incredible about this is that it's not just something that just came out of nowhere, but this is something that, you know, this film really hones in on in terms of the dialogue. Now, this is a film that's very dialogue heavy, but it's like you have to really listen closely to a lot of things that some of the characters are talking about. And there's one thing that really, you know, stuck with me throughout the whole film, is that the whole conversation about uncertainty, what makes a pope great. That's a big key thing of what they're trying to decide on, who they believe should become the next pope. And having someone that you think that's going to be good, or someone who's very predictable, that's when you know that they're not necessarily going to be a very great pope. The best popes are those who are very uncertain, who don't really have such a really certain future. And seeing that, right, having that whole conversation kind of circle back into the ending, I was just like, I remember when that plot twist came out, I was like, that makes a lot more sense, because now this goes back to the conversation early in the movie about uncertainty. And I just thought that was just a mind-blowing twist, and a way to kind of, again, bring back a lot of things from the beginning, how the dialogue becomes very, very important in terms of setting up the ending. That I just thought that was a really great way of just making this a whole full circle. So I absolutely love this film. I mean, for me personally, this is going to be one of the favorites going into award season. Ralph Fiennes does a really great job in this film, so we'll see how that all goes. But yeah, easily one of my top 5 films this year, and one film that really shocked me to the core, but in the best way possible. So I really loved it. I love the ending. I know some people might not, but for me personally, it's the ending and just the way it was executed, and just bringing it all together, that it just makes it such a really quality movie for that reason. Number 4, I mean, this one shouldn't really become as a shock. I mean, this is a film that, oh my god, like, I still think about it this day, and it's just like, wow, I can't believe this movie really hit me in the best way possible, and that is The Wild Robot. Now, I knew this film was, I had a feeling this film was going to be absolutely spectacular. It was going to be great. I just did not expect it to be so good. And I think a lot of it's just because I have my own personal experiences with like animals as well. I'm a very big animal lover. I love animals. So already you already catch me as an audience to go and watch this film. But honestly, this film is so thematic. It's so brilliant in some of the key themes that it really focuses on, seeing this whole idea of nurture, whether or not, in a case like this where you have a robot raising an orphaned bird, or an orphan geese, I believe it's a geese, and just seeing kind of this community in this island, and how people come together, and how you have this robot adapt to this environment. It's absolutely such a really heart-wrenching story. I mean, I will tell you this: going into this film, I did not expect myself to be crying so much. There were definitely at least 2-3 cases where I was bawling my eyes out because of how it emotionally hit me, just to see some of the moments with the robot and the geese, and the goose, and oh my god, this is a film that I feel like going into award season, it's going to be the favorite to win Best Animated Film. I'm saying this right now. It's honestly the best animated film that I've seen this year, just because of the fact that it was able to really hit me. Like, if you're able to get me to cry not once but twice, you're going to be automatically be in my top 10. And this is a film that really does that, but also it's a really brilliant film. I mean, it's really thematic. It's very, it really hones in on a lot of conditions and environments, and seeing this really unique story about bonding, and just seeing how, you know, even in certain circumstances, just the whole nurturing factor is what makes it such a really, really deep story. I love this film so much. I don't even know if I can watch it again, just because I'm so scared of crying again. But I love this film so much. I think my only mistake going to seeing The Wild Robot is just seeing it alone. Just don't watch this alone. Make sure you bring some tissues if you have not already seen it. But this film is absolutely brilliant. I love it so much. Easy top 5 film in my opinion. And I cannot wait to see how this film goes. I believe they have already confirmed already confirmed a sequel. So I look forward to seeing that. But honestly, The Wild Robot, one of the best films I've seen so far. It's not even a competition right there. So there you have it, number 4 right there. And number 3, this one, so again, going into my top 3, this is where I think that any one of my top 3 films I have listed here, you could really like rearrange them in any order. Again, it's just a matter of how I feel on a specific day. I think just for today, I wanted to put number 3 with Deadpool Wolverine. Not really big surprise. I absolutely had a blast watching this film. I mean, first off, just the idea of seeing Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman back together again, finally bringing their rivalry into the MCU, having Hugh Jackman make his debut in the MCU. Just the execution, it just couldn't be any better than what we got here with Deadpool Wolverine. Yes, I mean, just to see the dynamic between these two guys, the comic relief, just the dramatics of it, seeing the fact how, you have a character like Wolverine being so consumed by guilt of what happened with his past, because this is a death from Wolverine, so we have that, and yet we have some really brilliant performances coming from Hugh Jackman, especially at the end. Just a lot of the gimmicks and fan services. I know, like, we don't like having too much of the gimmicks and fan services, but I think it really worked here to film like Deadpool Wolverine. Again, I think what really carries this film is this relationship between Deadpool and Wolverine. I mean, just to see how their friendship flourishes and how they finally get to come together, and again, their introduction into the MCU. And I think I've mentioned this before. This is like maybe the first time I've actually watched a movie 6 times in theaters. I've never done that before. That's now a record for me. I had absolute blast. And not just that, but the action sequences are absolutely beautiful. Just to hear Madonna's Like a Virgin is absolutely the most perfect song to play in a movie like this. The soundtrack that they have for the film is great. The opening, opening up with NSYNC's Bye Bye Bye, like, and desecrating Wolverine's dead body. It's like absolutely masterpiece. I mean, it's not a masterpiece like that, but still, like, you cannot think of something as brilliant like this. It's a lot of great creativity that you have to apply into, and the wait was worth it. Absolutely brilliant. I had a blast watching this film. I still smile thinking about it. I still smile watching a lot of the scenes, especially the fight that we have with Deadpool Wolverine and the Deadpool and the Deadpool Corp. It's like, oh my god, this is absolutely phenomenal. A great film. Loved it. So incredible. I still watch a lot of the clips here and there throughout the years. So so therefore it's just no brainer. That's like literally my number 3. So there you have it. Number 3, I have Deadpool and Wolverine. My last 2, and let me just say, number 2 is going to surprise a lot of people, because let's just say there's a genre I really do not like. There's a genre that I was never really able to resonate with. I was never really able to kind of click with until I watched this movie, and that is Wicked. At number 2, I have Wicked, and that is really shocking for someone like me, because I don't like musicals. I really do not like musicals. I incredibly dislike musicals. I do not like them. I've tried so many times to watch as many different musicals as I can, but it's just not something that really personally I like. It's just not my taste. It's not my flavor. But that doesn't take away the fact that I really enjoyed Wicked. Wicked is maybe the one exception to this where I've enjoyed not just the story aspects of it, but even the musical parts, which is really weird because I don't like musicals. And one of the key things I don't like about musicals is the fact that there's always those musical bits, and sometimes that can really interrupt kind of the progression and the flow of a film. And in a case like this, it did not feel like that. I think this is a film that really does a great job of adapting the Broadway play. Now, again, I've not seen the Broadway itself. My friend has. Again, my good buddy Maya has watched Wicked so many times. But this film is just so absolutely incredible. Seeing this dynamic between Glenda and Elphaba, how they go from becoming arch nemesis to becoming friends, seeing how their friendship see how their friendship gets ruined as a result of this truth. And then not just only that, but just seeing this evolution. The performances in this film are great. I mean, Ariana Grande, I'm gonna say this, Ariana Grande is maybe perhaps the frontrunner to win Best Supporting Actress at this point, because she's just so funny, she's so bubbly. Like, you can tell that she really honed on this role just to give her flavor of it, and still giving the homage of Kristen Chenoweth's version. Yes, I've seen a couple of those clips, so I'm aware of like the version of the Glinda from the Broadway, but Ariana Grande does a really great job of showcasing Glinda in this film, being very bubbly, being very, I don't know, kind of self-absorbed in some ways, but again, very bubbly, very self-aware, but really funny. I think that's the key thing. She's so funny in this movie. Like, that really carries out from beginning to the end. Let's not take away the fact that Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba, just her own experiences and seeing her vulnerabilities in a film that's very subtle. And then when you have that final bit, the ending. The ending is what really just gives me the chills, when Cynthia Erivo has that final song, Defying Gravity, and just to see the emotions and the rawness coming from that performance. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I really enjoy this. That's not to take away the fact that there's so many other things that's so great about this movie. The production value, the songs, the choreography. I mean, I'm gonna say I'm still like obsessed with the choreography for what was it? What Is This Feeling? The one where they're in like the cafeteria, or not in the cafeteria, where they're actually in the outside in the halls, I believe. So yeah, so I absolutely love this film. I've seen it like 2 times now. Easily one of the, the most buzziest films going to award season thus far for me. I think it's going to win a lot. It's gonna be the favorites going into award season, but that's not to take away the fact that this film I really enjoyed. I really, really enjoyed it. Again, that's something that's very rare for me for a musical. And so it makes a lot of sense why I put this at number 2. It's a film that I just genuinely was just shocked how much I enjoyed. I did get to check out the Wicked experience in Universal, so that just made my whole experience right there even more incredible. But yeah, I cannot wait to see what's going to happen in part 2. I'm kind of a little aware of what happens, just because some people could not with spoilers, but it's okay. But I cannot wait to see what's going to happen in part 2. Again, this film does a really great job. I mean, John M. Chu, I mean, congrats to him. He did something that seemed impossible and made it possible. And wow, I hope this film does a great job, does really well going to award season. But this film deserves all the recognition it needs. No surprise there. Wicked is number 2 for me. Again, a huge surprise there, even for me, just maybe for all of you who know how much I despise musicals. And that's considering the fact that we had a lot of musicals this year. Joker, and I mean, I didn't hate Emilia Perez, but I just didn't enjoy it as much as the way that I enjoyed Wicked. Wicked just did something to me that I've never felt before. Yeah, like, what is this feeling, right? So yeah, for that reason, I put Wicked as number 2. Again, really deserved for that reason. Again, giving me a huge different perspective of musicals now moving forward. Finally, at number 1, the movie that I believe was perhaps my favorite this year. It shouldn't really come as a surprise, because I've spoken about this director so many times and how much I really enjoy his work. But it's Dune Part 2. Really no surprise there. I love Denis Villeneuve's work. He is someone who I've, again, time after time, really enjoy his craft. I loved Arrival. I love Blade Runner. I knew for a fact that when he got, when he was involved with the Dune movies, I was like, okay, I knew for a fact that he's maybe the right candidate for this, because I've heard so much about how the Dune books are probably the most adapted books ever, and somehow he's managed to figure out the formula. He's managed to break the code, and part 2 really elevates things from what we saw from part 1. It's definitely a little bit more action-packed, a little bit more focused on the characters. You do see a little bit more of the dynamics this time around. Funny enough, there's a little bit more comic relief, and all of that is because of Stilgar. But I think what makes this story so incredible is how tragic it is. Because yes, we do see a hero like Paul Atreides, and we are informed of him as the fact that yes, he is the protagonist, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be the heroic type, or at least the typical heroic type. We do see the tragedy of this as we see kind of the consequences of what it is to be a messianic figure, and we get a little bit of that at the end with the whole like Messiah thing, and and how that can be very dangerous. And we do see that. We get to get the essence of that. And we see by the end of this film that what the path that Paul is going to take is going to be very, very dangerous, very, very deadly, very, very consequential. And I think with this film, Denis Villeneuve does a really incredible job, again, showcasing the beauty of Arrakis, showcasing the tragedy of Paul's story, not being in any way biased to it, but being so that it is very dedicated to the actual book itself, and doing so in a way that it makes sense for a story like this, that, you know, it's not going to be a typical hero. There's going to be some tragic emotional heartbreak to it, and we see that here, especially when we get to see a little bit more of this chemistry between Chani and Paul, and how that impacts them as well. And I think that because of the way that Denis Villeneuve was so delicate and showing the details of this and being minute, and a lot of the characters that we meet, especially whether it be the Harkonnens or the Princess Ireland, who again does have a little bit more of a smaller role. I think some of the I would say if I had to be nitpicky about the movie itself, it's just like some of the characters were a little bit, you know, not as big players, or weren't as well fleshed out as some of the other ones. But even then, you're just nitpicking this movie. I mean, other than that, I mean, this film is just absolutely well executed, whether it be the cinematography, the visuals, the production design, the costume, the story execution, the flow of the story, the coherence of the storytelling, the characters, performances, everything about this is just absolutely top notch. It doesn't seem as though this film is going to get too much of an Oscar buzz, because I mean, I feel like a lot of it has slowed down, but even then, I think just looking into the technical side, this film is absolutely remarkable. Denis Villeneuve, there's a reason why he's honestly one of the greatest modern directors right now that we have, aside from Christopher Nolan. And again, I cannot even imagine what's going to happen when we do get Dune 3, because I believe that is happening. We're going to get Dune Messiah and see how he's going to try and conclude that trilogy. So cannot wait to see that. But there you have it. That's my top 10 list right there. What I thought were my favorites this year. Again, movies are very subjective. I mean, you might not agree with my list, which is totally fine. I mean, you might have other films that maybe you thought were much better than the ones I picked, which again, it makes sense. I mean, everyone, it has their own taste, their own flavor of films. To me personally, you can see kind of where my taste lines up in films. I tend to lean into more dramatics, although again, films that really have a huge impact on me are ones that I tend to list as some of my favorites. But you could be very different. And so, but that being the case, this is my top 10 right here. What a way to end off 2024. I mean, that is not to take away the fact that we had some really incredible films this year. I cannot wait to go into 2025 and see what we have in stores. We have quite a lot of movies in store, especially because of how the fact that a lot of movies were pushed to this year because to 2025 because of the whole strikes. But yeah, I cannot wait to see what we have in stores. But let me know your thoughts now, having seen my top 10 right here. Do you like my list? What are your thoughts about it? I want to hear what your top 10 films were, and movies that maybe, you know, I may have maybe missed, or maybe I need to reconsider. What do you think about, you know, going to Oscar season, award season, because I did list quite a number of them in my list. And let me know what your thoughts are going to 2025. Like, we can discuss a little bit about some of the things that are coming out, as well as the fact that I want to say Happy New Year's to everyone. I hope you are with your families and friends, and enjoying the last bits of 2024, and looking forward to seeing 2025. But yep, that's all I have to say. Let me know your comments down below, and make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in 2025.